me ask you a question. Why would you repeat old pain and misery if you could choose to escape it? I think everyone would prefer to avoid that situation. Yet many people escape a bad experience only to find themselves right back in the middle of another nightmare. In this episode, I want to talk about how you can design your new business to make sure you don't repeat old situations. I'm Larry Cornett, and this is Invincible Solopreneurs. So, it does seem like sometimes people escape a bad work experience and find themselves out of the frying pan and right back into the fire, right back into the middle of another working nightmare. I was recently talking with a friend who had worked for a narcissistic boss. Not uncommon, unfortunately. They were describing how bad the environment was and the horrible things this boss had said and done. So they eventually quit that job. Took a while, but they quit. And they found a new job. Guess what happened? Well, their new boss is pretty toxic too. The work environment has quickly become unhealthy, and now they are dreaming of escaping yet again. It's funny, negative patterns have an unpleasant way of repeating if you don't solve the underlying issues that create them. So given all this, I ask my business coaching clients to stop racing ahead with that entrepreneurial idea that they have. I want them to pause, I take a deep breath, and engage in some deep introspection. So if I work with you, if you became one of my business coaching clients, I start that process, that planning process, with a deep dive into who you really are. Not who you've been told to be, not who you've been as an employee. Maybe somebody that you've forgotten. If you go farther back in your life, even to your childhood, who are you really? How do you want to spend your days? How do you prefer to spend your time? What do you really want for your life, if you have a choice? And what do you envision at the end of your working journey? Where do you want your life to ideally end up when you're done with your professional working life? So in this episode, I want to take you through the first step of what a coaching engagement with me is like and the exercises I would ask you to complete. And I have various types of exercises and homework that I have people do that help them work through this. So I'm going to start with the first part. This first exercise, this homework, it's really all about you. It's all about you. And I like to have a visualization that puts you at the center of the entire model, because it really is. The business is something you're going to create. But I really think of this as being centered on you, especially as a solopreneur. So if you are a solopreneur, small business owner, lifestyle business owner, this is really about you. You're not trying to build the next Microsoft or Amazon. So at the center of it is you, your capabilities, your interest, and all those business ideas that you have bubbling up. And you're going to want to pick one. You're going to try to figure out, of all the things I could do and want to do and dream of doing, what's the best opportunity? What should I pursue? And then trying to figure out, given that, who is your real customer audience? The one that has kind of a large enough customer base that it's going to be profitable, that they're willing to pay you, they need what you have, they'll become fans of what you're going to sell, and trying to avoid those small audiences that aren't going to be big enough to support you, or if it's a huge audience, but really those people aren't ready to spend money, or an audience that's too hard to reach, or there's just no fit. You're trying to appeal to a certain type of customer and they are not interested in what you're trying to sell. And I see people do this all the time online. They do a lot of social media posts and marketing, and they're appealing to people who really don't want what you're selling and can't afford what you're selling. So it is that magic fit of finding the right business for you and finding the right audience who wants what you're going to sell. So I do have a system. I call it my Invincible Solopreneur System, kind of a 6-part framework. And this first one, number 1, is really all about you. I want you to design your life first. Design the life first, not the business. How do you envision your ideal lifestyle? So be realistic for the purposes of this exercise. And you can do this by listening to this podcast and going through this exercise and writing down some thoughts. Or if I work with you as a client or you take one of my workshops, I have workbooks where people work through this stuff. But be realistic and assume you still need to earn money to make a living. So you didn't win the lottery. You didn't inherit millions. You're going to be working. And you'll be working in your business every week, probably daily to some extent. But how much do you want to work? Do you really want to work 8-hour days, 12-hour days? Do you want to repeat maybe some of the bad patterns you've been in before? I know I was working 12, 14-hour days, and I said, I don't want to do that anymore. So how much do you want to work? When do you want to work? During the day, and what days of the week? Where do you want to work? In a home office? In some kind of a small office downtown? Where do you want to work, and how do you want to work? And with whom do you want to spend time? Do you want people around you when you work? Do you want family around you, friends? What are you looking for? And where do you wish you could live if you were controlling your work in life? That's something I don't think people consider. I know when I worked in tech, I moved to Silicon Valley in the Bay Area of California because that's where the jobs were. And at the time, we had to go to the office. There was a brief moment during COVID when people worked remotely. Guess what? Everybody's going back to the office again. So that really dictates where you live. You don't want to live far away and commute 4 or 5 hours every day. But once I started my own business and I made sure it was a location-independent business, not geographically restricted, all of a sudden I could decide where I wanted to live. I hadn't had that freedom before. So think about that for yourself. If you could own everything about your business, where would you live? Would you move? Would you go somewhere else? Things to think about as you're designing your life. So you have to think about what matters most to you. And you're going to want to create a prioritized list because I shared this recently in another newsletter or podcast. It's like you can't have it all. You just can't. You have to stack rank this. You have to create a 1, 2, 3, 4 kind of list. And what are the factors that are most important to you? Is it freedom? Being able to decide where you live, how you spend your time? Is it stability? Do you want to feel stable and safe? Is it income? Is the money side of it super important? Do you want recognition for what you're doing? Do you want to have impact, a positive impact, change people's lives? Do you want to do something that allows you to continue learning and growing? Do you want really healthy work-life balance? Do you want more time with your family? It depends on what you want. So that's one of the important things to start with is like, what's important to you? What matters most? And create that prioritized list of factors. And then what does ultimate success look like for you? What do you want to have achieved by the end of your working years? For some people, that's being the CEO of their own company. For other people, it's being an executive. For others, it's the freedom of building a business that is everything you want it to be, and it's something you could hand down to your children, potentially. What do you think success looks like for you? And think about that at the end. So you're not going to achieve that grand success in year 1 or 2. This is more like after 10 years, 20 years. And then similarly, your legacy. I know some people laugh at this. I think a lot of people as they get older think this is actually something they care about. What would you like to have contributed to the world? What do you want your legacy to be? How do you want to have improved the world, improved people's lives, made a difference so that people talk about you that way? So then this is a new part of the exercise I've added since the last time I taught this workshop, thinking about your potential path forward. And I have people go through a visualization about 4 potential paths. So one would be you stay where you are. Nothing changes. You keep your current job, keep on working in that job for that employer. That's one path. And the other 3 are 3 different business ideas. Most people have a whole bunch of business ideas. And so there are going to be some that's like, it's hard to decide. They all seem pretty good, pretty interesting, maybe different from each other and better in different ways. So 3 different ideas. So it's hard to do this exercise with 10 ideas, 20 ideas. That's why I say pick your top 3 and compare it to your current job. So the first thing to do is visualize spending the next 10 years of your life continuing with your current 9-to-5 job. And what is your immediate gut reaction to spending the next 10 years doing that? How do you think you're going to feel at the end of 10 years? If you stay on this path, working in your current job, how are you going to feel in 10 years? What are the benefits of staying on this path? And I'm sure there's some. What's the downside of staying on this path? What regrets will you have? And then move on and do the first business idea, right? So this first business idea, what is the next 10 years look like if you were building this business? And again, what's your immediate reaction to spending 10 years of your life doing this? And how are you going to feel at the end of 10 years? What are the benefits? What's the downside? And repeat this for business idea number 2 and business idea number 3. Now, as you've done this, and I want you to really make an effort to visualize, don't do a lightweight kind of thing. Like sit, quiet spot, no interruptions, and really picture what this is going to be like. And as you've visualized these 4 different paths, which one appeals to you the most? Which one stands out as something you would like to pursue? And this is one way to get to the bottom of picking a viable path. There are other things you can do. I have some homework exercises and a framework for evaluating the likelihood of success with a specific type of business. How likely is it that you can do this business? You have what you need. It's going to make money. There are customers who want it, et cetera, et cetera. The next thing is then moving on to this ideal lifestyle. So I'd asked about ideal lifestyle, and I challenge people not to jump to something silly where it's like, oh, I win the lottery and I live on the beach and I drink margaritas all day. It's like, I don't want you to talk like that or think like that. I want you to be realistic. Remember in the beginning, I said, imagine you still have to work. But starting with this list of questions, where do you wish you could live? Are you currently living where you want, or do you wish you could live somewhere else? What does this ideal life look like when you visualize it? With whom do you spend most of your time? I've done this, and I know what's ideal for me. Ideal for me is I'm spending most of my time with my family. I'm pretty introverted. I love my wife and kids. I like to spend time with them. When we spend a lot of time together, I just want more. So yeah, that's who I'm going to spend my time with, not coworkers, not a boss. But what is it for you? With whom do you wish you could spend most of your time? And then slightly different, with whom do you want to spend time when you're working? So we can't always sit and hang around with our family when we have to get work done, but who do you want to spend time with when you're working? It could be nobody, or it could be people in a co-working space or a best friend, I don't know, or it might be somebody that you partner with on your business. How many days do you want to work every week? How many hours do you want to work every day? When do you want to work? Where do you want to work? How do you want to do your work? Some people like to work on their phone. Some work on a laptop. Some want to work with pen and paper. How do you do your work? It depends on the kind of business that you're envisioning for yourself. And then to kind of get into this visualization a little more deeply, Start describing your ideal day. So thinking about the first half of the day, how would you enjoy starting and experiencing the first half of the day? When do you wish you could wake up? I used to have to wake up at like 5 a.m. Now I don't. I kind of wake up naturally at 7 a.m. It's just kind of the way I'm wired. But I'm no longer forcing myself to wake up at 5 a.m. So when do you want to wake up? What do you do when you first get up? Right? And different people want to do different things. I kind of make getting some coffee the first thing that I do. And then I do some journaling. But what do you want to do first? What's your breakfast like? Are you a breakfast person? Yes or no? What do you eat? How do you spend your mornings before you start working? And then once you start working, what kind of work do you prefer to do in the morning? Some people prefer to do some creative work. Some prefer to catch up on email. What do you wish you could do if you're the boss, and you are the boss when you start your own business? So what are you going to do in the mornings? And then what are you going to do about lunch? How do you want to spend your lunchtime? And then continue and think about your afternoons. How would you like to schedule your afternoon time? Who do you want to spend your day working with? Maybe take breaks. Who do you want to hang out with? When does your workday end? Some people work later than others. They're kind of night owls. Some people end sooner. When do you want your workday to end? And then what do you do for dinner? What do you want to do before you go to bed? How do you spend your evenings? And then when do you go to bed? So it seems a little silly doing this, but I'm telling you, it is a fun exercise, one that we rarely do, to say, what would we do if we had our complete freedom to design our day the way we want to? And then I have people go through a time blocking exercise. So you literally map out your daily schedule. And I do some of this in my real life. This is how I run my business and my time. And I start with 7 a.m., 8 a.m., 9 a.m., 10 a.m. What are my activities? What am I doing? When do I work out? When do I eat? When do I check email? When do I have client meetings? When do I work on my podcast? You name it. And then somewhat related, but it's a little bit different. It's day theming. I've talked a lot about day theming, but how would you prefer to have your weekly schedule broken down? So if you think about Sunday through Saturday, and you look at the mornings and the afternoons as a big block of time, what would you do? I've day themed with my schedule and my business, so that Monday is my community day and I do some writing. I don't do client calls. I don't do anything else. Tuesday, I spend the day writing my newsletters and articles and recording podcasts and episodes and editing and doing all that. That's how I spend my Tuesdays. Wednesday, I take off. I don't do work. I go for a hike with my wife. I go skiing with my wife in the winter, but we take off Wednesday and we have a date day. And then Thursday, Friday, I typically do client calls and business operations kind of stuff. And then I do some light work over the weekend, marketing stuff and brainstorming. But mainly it's a weekend is to get stuff done and hang out with my wife or my kids if they're home. And then the kind of a fun thing to think about is what comes after all of this. Now, if you look out past your final working days, what does retirement mean for you, or semi-retirement? I've talked about this before. It's not great for people to fully retire. I am not fully retired. And so what does it look like? Would you do some consulting, some advisory work, volunteer work, travel? What does retirement look like for you? And then shift gears a little bit and we talk about what I call your toolbox, but it's everything that's in your capabilities that you've acquired over your entire lifetime. So your natural talents that you've had since birth, you have physical advantages, cognitive stuff, emotional intelligence, some useful personality traits. We have ones that aren't so useful, but what are your useful personality traits? Like being confident. Maybe you're naturally confident. Maybe you have grit and determination. You just can't stop, which is powerful too. Thinking about the knowledge you've acquired, the things you've learned, the skills you've acquired, and the experience you've gained through work and life. And then going a little bit deeper, looking back on your entire life, going back to childhood, your work history. What do you love? What do you love to do? What lights you up? When do you go into a flow state and you lose track of time? That's a pretty good indicator. That's a very good indicator when you're in flow and before you know it, 2 hours went by and you didn't even notice it. And what do you enjoy doing most in your personal life? So I don't want this to be all about professional and business. Sometimes there are clues in our personal life that will show us things that we should be incorporating into our business or pursuing as part of our business. What do you like doing professionally? And what would you do if you no longer had to work? It's a bit of a clue. What are the things you wish you could do? Maybe play guitar all day or go fishing. I don't know. Write a book. What would you do? What do your close friends say that you love doing? So sometimes we can't see ourselves as well as loved ones and friends can see us. So I tell people, talk with your family members, talk with your loved one, talk with old friends, people who've known you for a long time, and find out what they think you love to do. Because they might recognize something you didn't even notice. What have you heard from your partner, your parents, siblings, you name it? And then shifting to work, what do you enjoy working on the most? If you look back on your work history, what types of projects have you found enjoyable or light you up, or you feel like you get into the zone? What type of people do you like working with? What kind of activities, you name it, that kind of stuff. And then this next part is a little different. So it's not so much what do you enjoy, but what are you great at doing? Because there can be things you're great at doing that maybe you don't enjoy, but you're really good at doing it. And again, what are those natural talents, your natural advantages, the knowledge, the skills, the work experience? What have your past bosses said that you're great at doing? If you look at your reviews or things they've told you, what have coworkers and colleagues and peers noticed? What tends to come easily for you that you may not even notice? So you may have to talk with people like your parents and your partner and friends. And like, what do you think I'm great at doing? What have you noticed? So looking at those talents and advantages and strengths and knowledge, capturing all of this. So make a huge laundry list of all this stuff because it will come in handy as you're trying to figure out, what am I working with that could be shaped into a business? Key work experiences, and then what sets you apart from other people? What has been your competitive advantage? Things that you're known for being great at doing that make you stand out. Probably reasons that you got promoted, reasons you got hired, why people want to work with you. What makes you different and unique? And then shifting gears entirely, thinking about what does the world actually need? So this is trying to figure out that market, the customer base. What do other people need that you might be interested in providing? Because being great at something doesn't necessarily mean the world needs it. Enjoying doing something doesn't mean anybody wants it or will pay for it. So you have to look at that intersection of what you're good at doing and enjoy doing with the needs of other human beings. How could you solve real problems for people, individuals, or companies? How could you do it better or maybe differently than what they're already using, kind of the existing solutions? I tell people try to focus on those evergreen needs of the human condition because stuff comes and goes, but there are certain things that people will always struggle with, certain things they'll always need. Trends can be okay, but if you do that, be prepared to quickly pivot later. You might have to. A little bit esoteric, a little higher level, but thinking about your mission. Are there significant problems in this world that you wish you could solve, that you would like to solve with your business? Are there specific types of people in this world that you want to help? I know some people really want to help children. Some people want to help the homeless. Is there anybody that jumps out that you're thinking about that you'd like to help? And thinking about your experiences, that knowledge, skills, everything in your toolbox, what's actually marketable? What could you provide that these people need, that companies need? What's marketable and useful? Big one, will someone pay you for this? So focusing on those who can actually afford your offer. I mentioned this a little bit earlier, but there are people who may be interesting customers, but they can't really afford what you're selling. So it's wonderful to do something you love, but you got to get paid. And so you have to think about, am I selling to individual people or am I selling to companies? Do I want a lower cost offer that scales and I have to find more buyers, or do I want a higher cost offer with fewer buyers? How do you want to position yourself? Are there tiers of service? Can you help people grow with you and move to higher tiers? You name it. There's a lot of stuff to think about. And then thinking very specifically about potential client targets. So who are the people that will pay you to buy what you're selling. And this can be specific companies. It can be specific types of people, personas. Who do you think your customer is? And then thinking about, well, why do you want this business? What's motivating you? People start businesses for a lot of reasons. They hate their job, and so they want to start a business so they don't have to work for somebody else, or they hate their boss. That's a big one. Talking about my friend who had toxic bosses, like, I'm kind of done with this. I want to start a business. People want to make more money. I remember my first business, believe it or not, paid me better than my job. I made more money with it. And I wasn't getting the raises I wanted, so I started a business and I immediately made more money. Sometimes people will lose their job and they're struggling to find a new one. So they're like, well, maybe while I'm looking and waiting, I'm going to start a business. I need some income coming in. People want more flexibility in their life. I talked about that. Jobs are not incredibly flexible. I have friends who've been asked to move to new cities or entirely different states because their job was going to relocate them and to be forced to move. People who've been forced to go back to the office when they don't want to and they kind of wish they could stay at home and work. Or they want a time shift and work different hours because they want to be able to take their kids to school or spend time with their kids. You name it. People want more flexibility. Well, when you create your own business, you can have a lot more flexibility. Some people want to build a legacy for their family. So this is something that's interesting that I don't think a lot of people consider. When you build a business, a successful business that has revenue and customers, and you've got your products going or your services going, this is an asset that you could pass down to your kids. And they could take it over, they could sell it. A job is not like that. Your kid cannot take over your job. Your employer isn't going to say, oh, Junior can have your job now when you pass away. Not going to happen. You can't sell your job to someone else. So when you build a business, it's actually a legacy that is it has value for your family. That's something I think many people don't consider. When I thought about my own reasons, my first business, I've actually had multiple businesses, but my first one many, many years ago, it gave me more stability and income than my previous job. My other job, it had a bunch of layoffs and shutting down the company and all kinds of weird stuff. So I wanted a business to give me more stability and make more money, and it did. My second business gave me a break from the stress of a bad job and a bad boss. So I was like, I'm tired of this. I need a break. I'm going to start my own business and not have to deal with that anymore. And then this current business that I'm running, it gives me more freedom and flexibility. I have the ability to go spend time with my children. I just spent 6 weeks in Alaska with my children because I have a flexible business. I just have to hop on a Zoom call, which I can do from anywhere there's internet. I've never had that kind of flexibility before. It's really, really important to me. So then think about why you want your business. What are your primary motivating factors and capture that list. It's kind of important. And then I have something in the homework that kind of boils down into a visual. These key things where, again, I want you at the center of it. So you're at the center, and then in an array around you, there's going to be your strengths. So what are the key strengths that you have that are going to be powerful, potentially applicable to a business? What's your unique spin on it? What makes you stand out? What makes you marketable? How do you help people or help businesses? What is the thing that you do to help them, whether that's a product or service, and try to get that down to some really key patterns, not very specific things, right? Why do you care? Why is this important to you? Who do you want to work with? You get to choose. You get to choose your customers. You get to choose the kind of people you work with, the kind of companies you want to work with, and turn away the ones that don't fit you anymore, or you don't really want to spend time with these kind of people. So you get to choose. Thinking about your personality, thinking about your likes, your values and beliefs. This is important. So what do you value? What do you believe in? I had a few, like, I believe and value independence. I believe in freedom. I think good people deserve to live a good life. And that's why I focus on people like that when I work with folks. I think it's important to be kind. That was something I did not have in my previous job. I want to be a lifelong learner. So these are all things that I value and I believe. And then being honest and saying, well, what are my weaknesses? What am I going to be worried about that I need to find a way that this doesn't hold me back in my business, that I can avoid dealing with this in my business? Maybe I don't have to worry about it, or I can hire somebody to take care of it. I can use tools to overcome it. We all have weaknesses. So this is your chance to build a business that doesn't have to worry about those weaknesses, which is kind of cool. So anyway, that is kind of at a high level, this first exercise that I have people work through. And it's all about you. It's all about putting you at the center of the business, because I think this is a rare opportunity to build something around you, your personality, your likes and dislikes, your strengths and weaknesses, you name it. We don't get to craft our job. We don't get to kind of restructure our employer, but we can build a business that really taps into who we really are. Until next time, I wish you the best of luck with building the business of your dreams.